Hello. Putting the hair up to read. Putting the hair up to read today. Because it just keeps drooping. I feel like a shoegazer when I do these videos. Because I have to gaze at the book. I haven't read from Mock Netpose, the Book of Awakening. We'll just read today. The last page that was marked from where I read was like June 5th. So it's been a while. It's June 17th. This says, Spirit and Psychology. Even the clearest water seems opaque at great depth, by Joel Agee. Each of us is like a great untamed sea, obedient to deeper currents that are seldom visible. Knowing this gives us 3 insights worth keeping in our awareness. First, we must consider that the deepest patch of ocean is as clear as its surface wave, though it remains unseeable to the human eye that bobs above it. Second, how far we can see into the deep depends on the calmness or turbulence of the surface. And third, just as the depth and surface of the sea are inseparable, so too are the spirit and psychology of each human being. Ooh, the depth and the surface of the sea are inseparable. It is our deep-sounding, untamed currents that cause us to rise and swell, dip and crash. Yet that base of spirit remains unaffected by the storms that churn up the surface. It obeys a deeper order. Still, as we beings living in the world are always subject to both, the deep and the surface, our spirit and our psychology. Though we can never see all the way to the bottom, on clear days when our psychology is calm, we can know the depth that carries us. When free of turbulence and anxiety, we can know the ocean of God that swells within. So, in love, in relationship, in the brief clarity that living gives rise to, I see all the way through you, as far as my sight can go, and I am forever changed. Then the winds come from the east, and suddenly you're all churned up. Your depth seems blocked, and I wonder who you are. This happens in the course of knowing oneself as well. It is unavoidable. Watch any patch of sea, it is never completely still. Even when calm, it reflects everything as it spreads and never vanishes. So too are feelings which keep changing in the light. The degree to which we are clear and seeable depends on how calm we are and how calm the day. But we are never cut off from our spirit, any more than the surface wave is cut off from the ocean floor. Fear of living often comes when we place all our energy into the moment of the wave, into the turbulent moment of our psychology. If revelation is the brief experience of seeing through the surface into ourselves or others, then wisdom is the recall of that seeing when the waters are murky. Wow. Heavy. What do you think about that, Janie? I'm reading Jane Austen's Emma, chapter 7 of volume 2 of Emma. We just had a little tete-a-tete with Frank Churchill. Emma and Frank Churchill were wandering around Hartfield / Highbury. And we're getting to know Emma a little more through these little conversations. She said, intimacy between Miss Fairfax and me is quite out of the question, is what she said about her and Miss Fairfax, Jane Fairfax, to Mr. Frank Churchill, who I kind of thought was gay. I kind of thought Frank Churchill was gay when I first watched this movie. And like when I first met him, I was like, oh, he's gay. But I don't think were there out gay people in this time? I can't even imagine, you guys. I can't even imagine. Okay. Chapter 7. Frank Churchill and Emma. He also thought that Miss Bates just talked a lot. And it was kind of funny when he was talking about that. Emma's very good opinion of Frank Churchill was a little shaken the following day. By hearing that he was gone off to London merely to have his hair cut. See what I mean? A sudden freak seemed to have seized him at breakfast, and he had sent for the chaise and set off, intending to return to dinner, but with no more important view than appeared than having his hair cut. There was certainly no harm in travelling 16 miles twice over on such an errand, but there was an air of foppery and nonsense in which she could not approve. It did not accord with the rationality of plan, the moderation in expense, or even the unselfish warmth of heart which she had believed herself to discern in him yesterday. Vanity, extravagance, love of change, restlessness of temper, which must be doing something, good or bad, heedlessness to the pleasure of his father and Mrs. Weston, indifferent as to how his conduct might appear in general, he became liable to all these charges. His father only called him a coxcomb, and thought it a very good story, but that Mrs. Weston did not like it was clear enough by her passing it over as quickly as possible and making no other comment than all young people would have their little whims. All young people would have their little whims. With the exception of this little blot, Emma found that his visit hitherto had given her friend only good ideas of him. Mrs. Weston was very ready to say how attentive and pleasant a company he made himself, how much she saw to like in his disposition altogether. He appeared to have a very open temper, certainly a very cheerful and lively one. She could observe nothing wrong in his notions, a great deal decidedly right. He spoke of his uncle with warm regard, was fond of talking to him, said he would be the best man in the world if he were left himself. And then there was nothing being attached to the aunt. He acknowledged her kindness with gratitude, and seemed to mean always to speak of her with respect. This was all very promising, and, but for such an unfortunate fancy for having his hair cut, there was nothing to denote him unworthy of the distinguished honour which her imagination had given him. The honour of not being really in love with her, of being at least very near it, and saved only by her indifference. For still a resolution held of never marrying. Whoa, she's like, I'm not getting married. The honour, in short, of being marked out for her by all their joint acquaintance. Mr. Weston, on his side, added a virtue to the account which must have some weight. He gave her to understand that Frank admired her extremely, thought her very beautiful and very charming, and with so much to be said for him altogether, she found she must not judge him harshly. As Miss Weston observed, all young people would have their whims. Now, that's the second time she's said that about Mrs. Weston. We're just going to go ahead and underline that. And we're going to go ahead and do that. Star that right there. Whenever a teacher says something twice, you better write it down. Because it's important. There was one person among this new acquaintance in Surrey, not so leniently disposed. In general, he was judged throughout the parishes of Donwell and Highbury with great candour. Liberal allowances were made for the little excesses of such a handsome young man, one who smiled so often and bowed so well. But there was one spirit among them not to be softened from its power of censure by bows or smiles. Mr. Knightley. The circumstance was told him at Hartfield. For the moment he was silent, but Emma heard him almost immediately afterwards saying to himself over a newspaper he held in his hand, just the trifling, silly fellow I took him for. She had half a mind to resent, but an instant's observation convinced her that it was really said only to relieve his own feelings, and not meant to provoke, and therefore she let it pass. Smart, Emma. That was a smart move. But maybe you should have checked in on that. Trifling, silly fellow. Although in one instance the bearers of not good tidings, Mr. and Mrs. Weston's visit this morning was in another respect particularly opportune. Something occurred to them while they were at Hartfield to make Emma want their advice, and, which was still more lucky, she wanted exactly the advice they gave. This was the occurrence. The Coles had been settled some years in Highbury, and were a very good sort of people, friendly, liberal, and unpretending. But, on the other hand, they were of low origin, in trade, and only moderately genteel. On their first coming into the country, they had lived in proportion to their income, quietly, keeping little company, and that little unexpensively. But the last year or two had brought them a considerable increase of means. The house and town had yielded greater profits, and fortune in general had smiled on them. With their wealth, their views increased, their want of a larger house, their inclination for more company. They added to their house, to their number of servants, to their expenses of every sort, and by this time were in fortune and style of living second only to the family at Hartfield. Their love of society and their new dining room prepared everybody for their keeping dinner company, and a few parties, chiefly among the single men, had already taken place. The regular and best families Emma could hardly suppose they would presume to invite, neither Donwell nor Hartfield nor Randalls. Okay, like Hartfield is the name of Emma's estate, and it is in Highbury. Okay, I'm getting it now, because the Westons live at Randalls. Okay, I'm getting it. Nothing should tempt her to go if they did, and she regretted that her father's known habits would be giving her refusal less meaning than she could wish. The Coles were very respectable in their way, but they ought to be taught that it was not for them to arrange the terms on which the superior families would visit them. The lesson she very much feared they would receive only from herself. She had little hope of Mr. Knightley, none of Mr. Weston. Wow, she's gonna go tell him like it is. I love that an estate can make money for people and that they only need the house they live on, and the Industrial Revolution really, I don't know, there's something about that, now women have to go get jobs. Not that that's a bad thing, but then who's at home raising the kids? Not that the women have to do that, but I don't know. And I was thinking about who's the woman, Emily Bronte, is that her name? And how she didn't really like Jane Austen books because they were too sappy, and she had kind of more rebelliousness, and people had to become rebellious because it was this Industrial Revolution made it so that everybody had to work, and well, I might as well just go fall in love with this guy if I can't. I don't know. I have such mixed feelings about the Industrial Revolution. Okay. I want just an estate to whatever. But she had made up her mind how to meet this presumption so many weeks before it appeared, that when the insult came at last, it found her very differently affected. Donwell and Randalls had received their invitation, and none had come for her father and herself. And Mrs. Weston's accounting for it. I suppose they will not take the liberty with you. They know you do not dine out, was not quite sufficient. She felt that she should like to have had the power of refusal, and afterwards, as this idea of the party to be assembled there, consisting precisely of those whose society was dearest to her, occurred again and again, she did not know that she might not have been tempted to accept. Harriet was to be there in the evening, and the Bateses. They had been speaking of it as they walked about Highbury the day before, and Frank Churchill had most earnestly lamented her absence. Might not the evening end in a dance? Had it been a question of his? The bare possibility of it acted as further irritation on her spirits. Oh my God, this is the first time she's used the word further and not farther. Whoa. That really bothered me before in previous novels. Okay, it's fine. The bare possibility of it acted as a further irritation on her spirits, and her being left in solitary grandeur, even supposing the omission to be intended as a compliment, was but poor comfort. Okay, so let me just make sure I'm getting it right. She's gonna refuse these invitations from the Coles, but she wants to be invited. And the fact that she's not getting invited, or her father's not getting invited, makes her upset. But if she gets invited, she will be refusing. And the Coles even know that about her, and that's why they're not. Yeah, but a conversation would be nice. I used to have a friend that I worked at Starbucks with, who would be like, "You didn't even invite me." And I was like, "Girl, you open at Starbucks. You're not going to come out with us. You have to get up at 3 a.m. to go to work at 4:15, and you love your sleep." She's like, "But I just want to be invited." I get it. I do get it. You want the opportunity of saying no. I get it. It was the arrival of this very invitation while the Westons were at Hartfield, which made their presence so acceptable. For though her first remark on reading it was that, of course it would be declined. Of course it must be declined. She so very soon proceeded to ask them what they advised her to do, that their advice for her going was most prompt and successful. She owned that, considering everything, she was not absolutely without inclination for the party. The Coles expressed themselves so properly. There was so much real attention in the manner of it, so much consideration for her father. They would have solicited the honour earlier, but had been waiting the arrival of the folding screen from London, which they hoped might keep Mr. Woodhouse from any draught of air, and therefore induce him the more readily to give them the honour of his company. He always feels so drafty. That's so funny. In the Anya Taylor-Joy one, Bill Nye was Mr. Woodhouse, and he had like 3 different sized screens around him. It was really funny. These folding screens. That's sweet that they're even thinking of that. Upon the whole, she was very persuadable, and it being briefly settled among themselves how it might be done without neglecting his comfort, how certainly Mrs. Goddard, if not Mrs. Bates, might be depended on for bearing him company, Mr. Woodhouse was to be talked into an acquiescence of his daughter's going out to dinner on a day now near at hand, and spending the whole evening away from him. As for his going, Emma did not wish him to think it possible. The hours would be too late and the party too numerous. He was soon pretty well resigned. "I am not fond of dinner visiting," said he. "I never was. No more is Emma. Late hours do not agree with us. I am sorry Mr. and Mrs. Cole should have done it. I think it would be much better if they would come in one afternoon next summer and take their tea with us. Take us in their afternoon walk, which they might do, as our hours are so reasonable, and yet get home without being out in the damp of the evening. The dews of a summer evening are what I would not expose anybody to. However, as they are so very desirous to have dear Emma dine with them, and as you will both be there, and Mr. Knightley too, to take care of her, I cannot wish to prevent it, provided the weather be what it ought, neither damp, nor cold, nor windy." Then turning to Mrs. Weston with a look of gentle reproach, "Ah, Miss Taylor, if you had not married, you would have stayed at home with me." He still calls her Miss Taylor. That's really funny. "Well, sir," cried Mr. Weston, "as I took Miss Taylor away, it is incumbent on me to supply her place if I can, and I will step to Mrs. Goddard's in a moment if you wish it." But the idea of anything to be done in a moment was increasing, not lessening, Mr. Woodhouse's agitation. The ladies knew better to allay it. The ladies knew better how to allay it. Mr. Weston must be quiet, and everything deliberately arranged. With this treatment, Mr. Woodhouse was soon composed enough for talking as usual. He should be happy to see Mrs. Goddard. He had a great regard for Mrs. Goddard. That's such a fun sentence. He had a great regard for Mrs. Goddard. and Emma should write a line to it and invite her. James could take the note, but first of all there must be an answer written to Mrs. Cole. You will make my excuses, my dear, as civilly as possible. You will say that I am quite an invalid and go— Wait, is this him talking? Who is this? Who is this? You will say that I am quite an invalid and go nowhere, and therefore must decline their obliging invitation, beginning with my compliments, of course. But you will do everything right. I need not tell you what is to be done. We must remember to let James know that the carriage will be wanted on Tuesday. I shall have no fears for you with him. We have never been there above once since the new approach was made, but still I have no doubt that James will take you very safely, and when you get there you must tell him at what time you would have him come for you again, and you had better name an early hour. You will not like staying late. You will get very tired when tea is over. I think that was Mr. Woodhouse talking. That felt very Woodhousey to me. But you would not wish me to come away before I am tired, Papa? Oh, no, my love, but you'll soon be tired. There will be a great many people talking at once. You will not like the noise. But, my dear sir, cried Mr. Weston, if Emma comes away early, it will be breaking of the party. And no great harm if it does, said Mr. Woodhouse. The sooner every party breaks up, the better. But you do not consider how it may appear to the Coles. Emma going away directly after tea might be giving offence. They are good-natured people and think little of their own claims, but still they must feel that anybody's hurrying away is no great compliment, and Miss Woodhouse's doing it would be more thought of than any other person's in the room. You would not wish to disappoint and mortify the Coles, I am sure, sir. Friendly, good sort of people as ever lived, and who have been your neighbours these 10 years. No, upon no account in the world. Mr. Weston, I am much obliged to you for reminding me. I should be extremely sorry to be giving them any pain. I know what worthy people they are. Perry tells me that Mr. Cole never touches malt liquor. You would not think it to look at him, but he is bilious. Mr. Cole is very bilious. No, HIPAA violation, huh? Did Perry tell him that he's bilious? HIPAA. No, I would not be the means of giving them any pain. My dear Emma, we must consider this, I am sure, rather than run the risk of hurting Mr. and Mrs. Cole. You would stay a little longer than you might wish. You will not regard being tired. You would be perfectly safe, you know, among your friends. Oh, yes, Papa, I have no fears at all for myself, and I should have no scruples of staying as late as Mrs. Weston, but on your account. I am only afraid of your sitting up for me. I am not afraid of your being exceedingly comfortable with Mrs. Goddard. She loves piquet. You know. But when she has gone home, I am afraid you will be sitting up by yourself instead of going at bed at your usual time, and the idea of that would entirely destroy my comfort. You must promise me not to sit up. He did, on the condition of some promises on her side, such as that if she came home cold, she would be sure to warm herself thoroughly. If hungry, that she would take something to eat, that her own maid should sit up for her, and that Cyril and the butler should see that everything was safe in the house as usual. So sweet, managing all these little personalities around Emma. Mr. Woodhouse, he's such a caring, worrisome. He worries a lot. He's a worry Woodhouse. Join me next time for Chapter 8 of Emma, Volume 2 of Emma. So fun. Again, I hear it when people say not a lot happens and it's a little boring. It's not boring to me because these interpersonal things are so fun to me. Fun. Happy reading to you all. And ta-ta!